Scalability in the sense what? We are just going to make a comparison between one hardware device to another hardware device and we are going to do the ratings. I wanted to store it somewhere else for my future use. Then who is going to do that? That is data resources. Software will going to have a control over the hardware. If I wanted to get done any of the work by the hardware, then software needs to instruct that particular hardware. Hardware devices is related to what? It is a physical component of the information system. Hello everybody, a warm welcome to one and all. I am Rohini TS, Assistant Professor, Vidhyaashram First Grade College, the Temple of Excellence, MYSURU. So in our today's session, we will be discussing about B.B.A second year, that is semester 3, a subject called Management Information System. In short, it will be termed as MIS, and we are dealing with a module 4 of the session 2. So in the last session, we were discussing about planning of the information system, and also I have discussed regarding the development of the information system. So the development consists of both design as well as the analysis. First, we have to do the analysis. For that, we are going to do the designing. So in our today's session, we will be discussing about the implementation. So first, I need to gather the data and information from the different or various sources. Then I have to analyze whether it is necessary for my requirements or whether it will going to satisfy the requirements of a customer or not. So if it is yes, then we are going to do the designing for that. So after the designing, it needs to be implemented. That means it has to be converted from the textual form or designing form into its physical operation. So it has to perform or it has to reach to the user for their in order to satisfy the requirements of a user. So when it comes to the implementation or implementing of a system or information system, so you just imagine you are creating or you are having new startup company. At that time, you don't have any new hardware or software. So it is mandatory or necessary in order to gather or in order to have a collection of softwares and hardware which is required for the implementation of a information system. So this implementation will going to have a different meaning. That means what? Collection of a data, and it when it is reaches to the development stage, or even when the end user saying or a person one who gave the requirements. So if they are saying, yes, these are my requirements, everything got over, then that will going to be implemented in the user's environment. So when the user is giving signed off document, at that time the system which has been developed will going to be reached to the customer. That is related to what? Implementation. So when you are starting a new company or when you are starting a new organization or any of the firms, it is necessary to have a both hardware and software. So we have to think what are the hardware I require, what are the software I require in order to run my organization without any mistakes or without any of the defaults. So here we have to implement the information system. For that, we have to acquire something. That means we have to get the hardware and software. We have to replace the existing system with a new system. Or if the existing system is not working properly, I need to do the re-engineering or reuse of that existing system. Or if I wanted to add any of the content to the existing system, every point we need to consider. So it is a conversion of a basic application to a complete replacement of the existing system. That is related to what? Implementation. And in this implementation or implementing of a information system has got different meanings. So as I told, it will going to involve hardware and software acquisition, and we have to have a software development, testing of programs, and then procedures, conversion of data resources, and variety of conversion alternatives. So we have to have a software and hardware, development has to take place, testing needs to be takes place, and after that we have to have a testing of programs and procedures, then conversion of data and resources, and then variety of the conversion alternatives. So if we have any alternative hardware and software, that needs to be checked, and this implementation will be considered as somehow difficult and it is time consuming process, because in order to reach this implementation, we have to pick the data, we have to analyze it, we have to design it, then only it will going to reach the implementation stage. So in this implementation stage will going to plays a very important role. It has to satisfy the customer requirement. So now we'll see how we are going to have a acquisition of both hardware as well as the software. As we all know that hardware is nothing but what? It is a physical component of a computer system. So you can take the example of CPU, monitor, keyboard, mouse, printer, speaker. These are all which comes under the hardware category. Then how we are going to acquire the hardware or how we are going to select the hardware, that is based on these approaches. So in that first hardware evolution technique, within that first approach is what? Ad hoc approach. So what it means? We are going to take an hardware device, or we are going to take, or we are going to receive hardware device based on some people's opinions. So if you are taking any of the electronic gadgets, or if you are taking any of the hardware devices which is based on someone's opinion. For example, if someone is saying yes, this mobile is working fine and these features are fine, then we will go with that. So in the same way, if I wanted to have any of the hardware devices for my information system, then I will take the opinion of others. Somehow it could be bias in nature. They might going to hide the some features which is not working properly. So that is related to what? Ad hoc approach. Next we have a scoring approach. So in this we are going to have a list of characteristics, and each characteristics of the hardware will going to be rated. So they are going to give the percentage, or they are going to give the scoring. So which alternative has more scoring, then that will going to be evaluated, and that will going to be selected for the information system as a hardware. Next we have a cost value approach. So in this cost value approach, here also it is like a quotation. So which one is giving more efficient hardware with low budget, then we will approach for that. So in this cost value approach, this will going to include whether it is necessary or whether it is okay to give this much of amount for this particular hardware. So if yes, then they will go with that particular hardware system. That is based on the monetization, whether it is worth of giving this much of amount for the particular hardware. Next we have a vendor capability. Apart from all these things, we have to think about the capability of a vendor, the one who is providing that hardware system, whether he is going to deliver the hardware system on time, within a particular time, or with a specified cost, or what about the delivery time. So everything needs to be considered in the vendor capability. So these are the approaches in order to evaluate the hardware which is required for the organization or for the information technology. So now we'll see hardware acquisition methods. Now I got to know that what are the approaches I have. I will take the opinions of other, I will take the feedback, and I will go with a ratings or a scoring method. I will take care about the money, and I will take care about on what time it will going to reach to me. So here we are going to acquire the hardware which is based on some of the methodologies. What is that? Rental directly from the manufacturer. I can take a rent, like if you are running any of the organization but you don't want it to own that hardware device for the information system. At that time you can go with rental option, or you can go with lease option, or else you can go with direct purchase outright. So here rental, so how they are taking, so it could be based on number of months, or could be based on the number of weeks or for days. So we can take the rent of the hardware devices directly from the manufacturer, or else leasing through a third party. So that third party can be manufacturer or owner of the hardware device only. Okay, so leasing, they are going to take for the leasing over for some years or for some months could be takes place. Next, outright purchase. So this outright purchase is what? We are owning the hardware device for the information system, but it has to obey the taxes, all the policies, a set of rules and regulation needs to be followed when they are purchasing the hardware devices. So these are the methods of acquisition of the hardware. Then on what factor we are going to select the hardware device? I wanted to purchase some of the hardware devices. On what basis I am going to evaluate this hardware? So that is hardware evaluation factor. So mainly what is the first factor? I will just have a concern regarding the performance. What will be its speed? So what will be the accuracy? How it will going to perform? If something goes wrong, what will be the recovery rate? So that is related to what? Performance. And cost is related to its money. How much it cost? Can I get a same hardware devices with a lower cost? That is related to what? cost. Reliability in the sense, can we trust this hardware? If some errors occur, what is the recovery date? How that failure will going to be recovered very soon? So can we trust this system will be termed as reliability. Then we have a compatibility. So if I'm having, or if I'm creating or manufacturing any of the hardware devices, will it going to be compatible with the existing hardware system of my information system? It should not harm anything to the existing system or existing hardware devices. Next, technology, whether it is wireless or wire technology, will it going to use internet, intranet, extranet? So how this technology is going to be well coped up with this hardware, that we have to think. Then ergonomics, it is related to what, whether it is user friendly, whether it is simple to use, or it is complex in nature. So that is related to what? It must be more user friendly and it's supposed to be simple in nature for the usage. Then connectivity, and we have a scalability. So that means we have to analyze and we have to scale the performance of this hardware. Scalability in the sense what? We are just going to make a comparison between one hardware device to another hardware device and we are going to do the ratings. So that is scalability. And software support, whether these hardware devices support the software or whether it will be compatible with the software which I require for my information system. So these are the factors we will going to think or we will going to evaluate while having this hardware. So this is regarding hardware. So next we'll see about the software, that is software acquisition. As we all know that software is nothing but that is a set of instruction which will going to tells the computer to do the task. So this software will going to have a control over the hardware. If I wanted to get done any of the work by the hardware, then software needs to instruct that particular hardware. Okay, so here the system analysis and design specifies the type of software that would be required to produce the desired output in order to satisfy the user needs. So when I can get to know what kind of software I want, so when we are having the system analysis and design, at that time it will going to specify the kind of software what I require for my organization or for my information system, that will going to be given at the time of its analysis and design in order to satisfy the requirements of a user. So here also, on what basis are we going to select the software? It will be based on the quality. So what is the quality of a software? That represents what? Speed and accuracy of a software, and also efficiency, how efficient it is in order to satisfy the requirement of a customer, how it will going to work well with the information system or a software which is already existed. Next, it must be flexible. If I wanted to delete the content of a software, it has to allow. So if I wanted to insert or if I wanted to do some of the computation or modification to the software, then also it must be allow us to do all those things. It has to be flexible in nature. And security, it should not allow any unauthorized person to access that software contents, or it should not allow any of the person who is not authorized in nature. It has to allow the user only if they are genuine user of the software. Then connectivity, it will going to include internet, intranet, extranet, and also whether will going to be compatible with the hardware devices. Next, maintenance, how much it will going to be cost for the maintenance? Can we maintain this software for a longer time without any errors or without any destructions? And also it must be well documented because it needs to be used for the further or for future days. So it has to be well documented. Next, we have a hardware, whether this software is going to be compatible with the hardware. So if the software is not compatible with the hardware, then it is no of use. So we have to consider all these factors when I am choosing or when I am evaluating the software which is well for my organization or for the information system which is taking place in the enterprise or a firm. So here we have some of the criteria in order to select the software systems. So we are going to have a reliability, Can we trust this? And users, who will be the user of this system, for whom we are creating? Are we creating this software for the end user, or for a specialist, or for the developers, or for the designers? Are we giving it to the customer who wanted to use the software? So we will think about the type of user and what is its functionality, what are the function it will going to perform, what is its capacity, on what basis, whether it is able to hold large amount of data, whether it is eligible to process large amount of instructions per second. That is capacity, and it must be flexible in nature, it must be usability, that means it must be available 24/7. Whenever I wanted to use, it has to allow. Then security must be the main concern, and its performance, that means the recovery from the failure rate must be very low. It has to be reached to the recovery stage within a fewer second or minute at the time of occurrence of a failure. Then we have a serviceability and then ownership. So whether it is a rental or for the lease one, or if it is a purchased version. So these are the factors we are supposed to think, or these are the criteria we have to think while purchasing or selecting this software for the information system. This is related to what? Management and selection of the hardware as well as the software. So now we'll see the next topic, that is related to what? Managing and controlling the information resources. So as we all know that information is not going to deal only it is not only related to the data and information which is resides in the computer system. Information is an asset for the organization. It has to be well managed and it needs to be very efficiently and effectively managed in the organization. So for that purpose, we have to manage and control the information resources. So if you are not managing or if you are not controlling the information resources in an effective manner, then there could be a situation of losing of that resources, or there could be a misuse of that particular resources. So it has to be well managed and it needs to be controlled by the authorized person. Then what are the things which will be considered as the resource of the information system? I can consider people or human as a resource, and I can consider hardware as a resource, and I can consider software as a resource, data will be the resource, and networking will be the resource. If we don't have any one of these, the information system is not complete. For example, you just imagine I wanted to give some input. For that, I require some hardware devices. That could be what? Input devices. Okay, I need to give some data. Then who is going to give the data? For that purpose, I have a user. So the user has to give the input. What are their requirements? On what basis they are giving input? So user is important. In order to give the data, hardware is important. Then who is going to process the data? Which resource will going to process the data? That is related to software. So after that software, I wanted to communicate or I wanted to distribute that system or a data and information over the internet. Then who is going to provide that privilege? That is related to networking. I wanted to store it somewhere else for my future use. Then who is going to do that? That is data resources. Okay, we'll see about the people resources. So people resources is nothing but the person, one who is involved in the activities of the information system. So it can be of two types. One is end user and another one is information system specialist. So when it comes to the end user, he is the client of a MIS. That means he is going to get the benefit out of the MIS at last. And then we have a information system specialist. The specialist person, one who is going to develop and operate a system, one who is developing the system and one who is operating that system as an information system specialist will be termed as information system specialist. In short, it is IS specialist. And this is related to people resource. Next we have a hardware devices. Hardware devices is related to what? It is a physical component of the information system. So this hardware resources needs to be very efficiently it has to work in an efficient manner. So if hardware device is not compatible or if it is not supporting the software which is existed in the information system, then there could be a problem in the information system. So that this hardware is also considered as what? Resource of the information system. Then what these hardwares include? It includes CPU, keyboard, mouse, desktop, printer, speaker, or any of the plotters. So whatever the physical component that I require for my information system will be termed as what? Hardware resource. So next I have a software resource. As we all know that software is a set of instruction which will going to guide the system in order to perform or in order to do the calculations or computation part, whatever the task it could be, it will going to be performed by the hardware with the guidance of software. So this software resource consists of system software and application software. So this system software is a set of instruction. Okay, it will going to controls and coordinate overall working of a computer system. So you can take the example of operating system. So you can consider Android, Mac, or you can consider Linux, Unix, Windows. So those are all the operating systems. So without that operating system, I can't run any of other application software. Then what is this application software? It is a software which is meant for a particular purpose. You can take the example of WhatsApp. So here, whatever the feature is there, that can be takes place only within this WhatsApp. For example, you can have a video call, you can have a voice call, and you can chat, you can share the images. Application software is what? That particular software has been built in order to perform a particular task. But taking this WhatsApp, I can't take a printout. So if I wanted to take a printout, then there must be some software which is related to the printing. So that is what difference between this system software and application software. I will consider this data as a resource. So data is somehow like more than the raw material, which is lesser than the information. So that has some meaning that needs to be processed in order to get more meaningful data. Okay, that is data. So then how I am going to store the large amount of data and variety of data or heterogeneous data in the computer system? That is with the help of this database. Then I need to segregate the data and I need to do some polishing to the data. I need to do some computing and we have to delete some of the content which is not necessary. Then who are all going to do all those things will be done by this knowledge base. So this knowledge base will going to store different or variety kinds of rules, cases, and it will going to hold different kinds of functionality of a data. This is related to what? Data resources. At last we have a networking resources. So in order to have a communication over the one computer system to another computer system, then internet is important. This networking resources consist of internet, intranet, extranet. So that comes under networking resources. So if we don't have a networking, then there is no possibility of exchange of the data, and this includes communication media, can be fiber optics or twisted pair cable, and we have a network support. As I told, it will be LAN, WAN, MAN, internet, intranet or extranet. This is related to what? Resources, and we need to manage and we need to control the information system resources. We'll see the last topic of this module, that is information resource management. In short, it will be termed as IRM. IRM is nothing but information resource management. Why we are going to use this information resource management? And this question is important for either 5 marks, 10 marks or even for 15 marks. It can be as for 5, 10 or for 15 marks also. So now we'll see about this information resource management. So it is a program of activities directed as making effective use of information technology within an organization. This IRM or resource management of an information system, it is a program of activities which is going to be directed in order to make a effective use of the information technology which will going to take place within the organization. So within my organization, I wanted to do some effective use of the information technology. That effective usage of the information technology will going to be guided by some of the set of program activities. That set of activities or that set of program activities will be termed as what? IRM or information resource management. Then this information resource management incorporates 3 broad categories. So It has a information, it has a resource, and there must be a management. We have to manage the resource of the information, because information is itself, it's a resource. Okay, so it has the three categories. We'll see. First is what? The large mass of stored data. I can consider that as a data. This information resource, even additional information, will going to place an important role for the competitors. So if I get to know more about the competitors, then that will be easy for me in order to make a best decision in the market. So here also, this information resource management, or IRM, will going to have a large mass of stored data. We will call that as a data in short. Next, the huge volume of application system program code. I will be calling that as a application software. We are using set of instructions in order to perform a particular task. It must be specific in nature. It has to serve the individual purpose. Then if it is more specific than objective, it is more objective than the subjective, then it will be easy in order to make a business decision. So that this application software will going to perform a particular task. Next, we have a numerous network hardware components along with the operating programming. So that will be termed as technology. I wanted data in order to operate that. I want application software in order to communicate. I require this networking technology. If I have a technology, if I have a voluminous data, or if I have adequate data, and if I have some software in order to process that data from data to information, then that is so sufficient in order to manage the resources of an information system. So next we'll see what are the steps or principles we have in the information resource management. This is what universal resource management principles or steps, what and all we have to follow in order to have this information resource management, and it is also important question. So we'll see the first point, that is responsibility and authority must be clearly designated. So I must clearly specify the responsibility and authority of that particular data. So if I know the value of a data, then that will going to be managed in a well manner. So designated to manage the limited resources on behalf of the enterprise. So if I get to know the value of the information, that will going to be effectively and efficiently managed. That needs to be managed with a well responsibility and authority. The person, one who is authorized, they have to use that particular resources on the behalf of this enterprise. So next, the resource is not free. Remember, because the resources, if I am getting any of the data and information, I need to pay. If I am taking any of the hardware, software or networking as a resources, it is not at all free. So we have to pay for that. So if you are paying, we have to get the complete benefits. So if you are managing it, or if you are having a controlling over this one, then it can be managed in a well manner. So the limitations must be recognized and managed. So if I get to know the boundary of usage of that particular resources, then that will going to reach to many people with a limited resource. Next, the resource must be controlled and allocated. So if you are not controlling the usage of a resources, then there could be a possibility of misusing of a data, or there could be a possibility of using a data without any limitation. So if you are not controlling, or if you are not allocating who require what, up to what time, if you are not giving the allocation of a resources for a particular time, then there could be a situation of misusage of that particular resources. So it has to be controlled and allocated. The resource must be constantly tracked. Who is using this system? For what purpose they are using? Are they using these resources genuinely or not? If they are taking the resource and if they are not using that resources, everything needs to be tracked in a basis. Next, the resource must be properly stored and maintained. So if I wanted to have that resource for the future days, it has to be tracked and it has to be properly stored and maintained in a well manner. So then only this resource will going to be available for the future days also. What is the last point? That is, the resource must be focused. So that means whenever we are using a resources, I have to think about the future days, whether it is adequate for the future days in order to get benefit from that particular resources. So by keeping all these principles, by keeping all these steps, we can manage the information resource in a well manner or an effective manner. We'll see some points related to this IRM. So the information resource management is changing the way typical IS or IT is implemented within the enterprise. So this is what somehow enhanced version of the existing system. So there should not be any restriction or there should not be any systematic way of using a system as it is. So whenever it is required, it must be available, but allocations or maintenance controlled, everything needs to be takes place, but somehow it is different than the systematic or typical way of having a IS or IT implementation which has been takes place within the organization, so that it manages the information resources properly and effectively. So other than the typical version, it is having a enhanced version of the usage of the information resource management. So it will be takes place, that means the resources will going to be properly and will be managed effectively. Then this IRM will provide faster, cheaper and better business operations, and also it will significantly greater business flexibility, innovation and change. When there is a change, then there could be a possibility of having the innovation. So it should not be monotonous in nature. It should somehow, we are conveying that this information resource management is different than the typical information resource management system which has been done by the IS or IT implementation. Then this IRM includes the management of all the kinds of data. It is not only considering about the information, so it is consist of what? All the kinds of data, and it will going to take care about the numbers, text, images, audios, videos. The data could be anything. Everything will be considered as a resource or asset for the organization that will going to be maintained well by the IRM in the organization. So in making the proper strategy at a certain moment. That means it has to available on time whenever and wherever, however it is required. This is related to what? Information resource management. And we have some dimensions in the information resource management. I can't see the information only in one dimension, like I can't use the information only for the purpose of decision making. Also, we have other 5 major dimensions. What is the first one? That is strategic management. This strategic management of an information will going to contribute to the profitability and strategic object of the firm. So if I wanted to get profit, I have to think differently than my competitors. This IRM or effective usage of the information resource management will going to guide me in order to have a profitability, and also it will going to give us the strategic objectives of the organization or firm. Next, it has a operational management. So management of the operations which is taking place in the organization is also important. And what it includes system development, and it will include some of the operations along with the technical services. All these operations are working well, then we can manage the information resource in a effective manner. So strategic management, operational management, another dimension is resource management. Now we got to know what are all the resources. So we have a data and information as a resource, and hardware and software as a resource, telecommunication network is resource, and IS specialist are a personnel. The person has to be there. User will be considered as a resource. The management of these resources is also one of the dimensions in the IRM. It is not only taking the information as a resource. It will consider the strategy as a result, operations, what are the things or what are the operation performing in the organization will be considered as one of the dimension. Then management of a resource is also important along with the technology management. It will going to include internet, intranet and electronic commerce, that is e-commerce. So if you are making a business over the online or by making use of the internet, that will be termed as e-commerce and collaboration system. That is related to what? Technology management. At last, we have distributed management. So if I am considering any of the organization, enterprise or any of the firm, it is not only consisting of a single level. So it will going to have a different level like strategic, tactical and operational. So at each level we have a manager, we have a top level authority at each level. Then this distributed management, one of the dimension of this IRM will going to have a concern regarding the different levels of manager activities and their thoughts as well as their decision making. So it will be responsibility for the managing information technology is being distributed to the managers of an organization at all the levels with all the function. I hope you all understood regarding this IRM or Information Resource Management, and this is somehow sure question in the MIS. Here I have listed out some of the important and frequently asked question from this chapter. So that is of 15 marks question, 10 marks as well as the 5 marks question. So you have to understand about the system analysis and design and the difference between those two, and SDLC as well as process of planning and developing and process of managing and controlling of a information system, SDLC, information system development life cycle, and difference between the system analysis and system design, as well as this information resource management, important for 5, 10 as well as for 15 marks. So it's all about today's session. In my next session, I will be discussing about the module 5, that is last chapter, application technologies. Until that, keep learning, keep on growing. Thank you.